I don't even talk to him.
You don't like him?
No.
You're also known as Duck Corella.
I refuse to answer on the grounds of main intent to
You
criminate.
got any business?
I refuse to answer on the grounds of intent to criminate.
You have any profession?
I refuse to answer on the grounds of main
You
intent
have
to
any
criminate.
occupation?
I refuse to answer on the grounds of main intent
Are
to
you a
criminate.
known racketeer?
I refuse to answer on the grounds of main intent to criminate.
What's her name? Winkleman of the Elizabeth
You ever
Police.
get any money from Costello?
No.
And did you ever get any money from Maya Lansky?
Welcome, folks, to the not night court, the smoke show, our Wednesday night smoke show, talking about smoking meats, barbecue style, Texas style is what I like, but we're going to cover a lot of different things. We got a special show tonight. We've been a little, folks, been a little weird for us over the last week. I've had some health issues that's kind of kept me out of the game, and other folks have been pretty busy with, life. So we apologize for not bringing some of our best content to you over the last week, but we're back at it, and we've got a great show tonight. We're going to cover pellet smoking, how to get your pellet grill set up if that's what you want to do. I call it the microwave or smoking, but there's other guys out there that say that they can pull it off. I will tell you that our night court co-host Big Ron, he pellet smokes, and I've seen some of his product. Hadn't tasted it, but I can see it through those pictures that the man knows what he's doing. Whoa.
Yeah, and
Security alarm went off at the Joe Lanu Casa. So, we're gonna let Big Ron explain to us how to set up a pellet grill tonight. If you've got one and just got started, we've got a guest. I hope he'll get in here soon from X that is transitioning from a side box smoker, like I like to smoke, with traditional wood, traditional smoker, and he's started using a pellet smoker. We're just gonna see if we can't get Big Ron to help him get started on it. We also got a very special guest, Scorchey. You might have seen him on X, but he's got Scorchey hot sauces. We're going to talk about his hot sauces and how we might be able to incorporate that into some smoked meats, or how he may have incorporated that in some smoked meats, and how he puts that together. And I've got now he doesn't know this yet, but I've got I'm gonna throw a bone to him to see if there might be an idea that we might be able to do with some Scorchy hot sauces. But and of course, we got Bruce Wayne as our co-host, and our good friend James, who will be soon a novice smoker kicking. Well, we'll probably have some of our old friends stop in. Shane from Minnesota, maybe Jason from Minnesota. We're also going to finish this up with talking about how to do some beef ribs. I'm going to give you my recipe on beef ribs, on how to get the smoke flavor in, to keep them juicy, and make people keep coming back for more. Pork ribs are easy. Smoked ribs with a little talent are 100% better, in my opinion, than any pork product. But Scorchy, I want you to introduce yourself, and I want you to tell us about this Scorchy hot sauce. Take a couple of minutes of that, and then we'll get with Big Ron. Big Ron, go ahead and get your 3x5 cards ready on how together a pellet grill. But Scorchy, introduce yourself. Tell us about your hot sauce.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Scorchey's hot sauce haven't been around very long. Startup company, just myself right now. I grow all my own ingredients. I don't use anything store-bought. I do have certain ingredients that I cannot grow myself, but I do buy from other growers. So I try to keep everything as fresh as possible when I make my hot sauces. I'm not limited to just hot sauce, though. I do also make barbecue sauces in a range of heat levels. I make a sandwich spread. Have not come up with a name for that yet, but it's typically good on a meat, a meat sandwich. It's great on burgers. Have not tried on any other meat yet, but it's pretty good. I mean, it's even good for dipping, for using like tortilla chips or something. Leaning into making salsas and ranchero sauces as well, because I like a good ranchero sauce, but I have not found one that's hot enough for me yet. I have a hard time finding hot sauces that are hot enough for me yet. The biggest goal that I go with for my products is that I go for flavor. Always go for flavor. The heat always sneaks up on you at the end when you're least expecting it, which I enjoy thoroughly. And I see a lot of people enjoy it too, as they're trying to choke down most of my hot sauces. I like smoking peppers. I don't smoke a lot of meats, but I definitely smoke a lot of peppers because they add some amazing flavor to your foods when you mix them in when they're smoked.
I'll tell you
Excuse
what,
me.
Scorcher, we're going to get to some smoking peppers and some other shows coming up, but we'll absolutely touch it with yours. I think it's very interesting. Let's get to Big Ron, and I also want to welcome Professor Savage Dad on X. If you're not following him on X, give him a follow. He is in Arizona. He is a traditional side mount smoker, like I like to smoke. But he's recently gone to a pellet grill, I believe, a Pit Boss, if I read that correctly.
Yep,
And,
I
and,
did.
uh, and I believe in our conversations with Professor, he is working on getting his dialed in. And lucky for you, Professor, we have a bit of an expert with us, Big Ron. He's going to go over how to dial one in, or how he dials his in and gets to
Awesome.
achieve some actual smoking going on. But Professor, you want to take a quick minute and introduce yourself and where people can follow you at?
Sure. I'm Professor Savage Dad. You can find me on YouTube, kind of, Rumble, almost all the time. That's where a lot of my stuff lives. You can find me here on X. I do a show called Dadcast. Usually weekend nights. I've moved it recently to Sunday nights. And then because I've got some personal stuff going on, my show's kind of on hiatus right now. But I hope to be back soon.
And he really does make great content. I found him through the Legion of Memers, and he makes great
Much
content.
appreciated.
No, absolutely great content,
you,
and
sir.
I'm super excited about what he's trying to do with the Pit Boss. He and I had some crosswords because when you show up with a pellet smoker, I'm going to hit you with the microwave smoker. So just everybody take that for
Oh
what it's
no,
worth.
I know.
But
Like I said,
I will
it
tell
was
you,
Hmm?
Big Ron has changed my mind about smokers. Maybe dig into it a little bit more and look at these pellet smokers and to see if maybe they are actually a viable option. And I think they are. But now you have a Pit Boss, right, Professor Savage? That's what you picked up recently.
Yep. I got their
Okay.
head 3 for Father's Day.
Oh,
Enjoying it so far. It just got to
okay.
really dial it in. I got it because I could get down to 130 and do a real low heat smoke. Except I live in Arizona, so nothing's low heat right now. And that's, I think, one of the big problems I have is if I put something outside that's metal, it's 200 degrees. Period. I can't get it lower. Like I could try to smoke cheese, which is one of the things I want to do in this, but not this time of year. It'll just melt. I turn the temperature up. It's the problem, I think, is temperature. Shit's cooking way too fast. So last smoke, I turned the temp way down from what you would do ribs at. I did them down at 200. Infinitely better than the last smoke I did. And I think it's got a lot to do just with the ambient temperature outside making everything hot. Like I could smoke a brick on my side mount, charcoal grill. You just got to push it far away. And this time of year, you don't have to do much of anything. Just make sure that you're getting a lot of smoke in there. I don't need much coal to keep it going. I don't need much heat at all. It'll be 200 degrees just being out in the sun with a black grill.
So you get good chamber temperature and you're able to maintain smoke with a traditional wood burning grill with basically smoldering. But when what you're saying is with the Pit Boss, you're still trying to dial it in. All right, folks, I'm gonna put up. Now this is Big Ron. I'm about to pitch it to you, my friend, because you are our pellet smoker expert on this show. But I believe what you're going to be looking at is, I think this is Big Ron's actual grill. It's a Pit Boss, right?
Yeah, I run a Pit Boss Platinum series. It looks more like your traditional side smoker with what you're used to seeing, Joe. What he is running is more like a box. It's taller than it is wider. It's designed specifically for smoking, where this grill here that I have will do a combination of grilling and smoking and other things. So one of the things that I'm hearing him talk about is obviously ambient temperature living in Arizona is gonna be one of the big issues. He's gonna have that constant heat from that area. So I'm gonna make the assumption that you have the ability to put that thing in the shade. And honestly, with what you're telling me, you may have to just do a lot of your grilling at night also. Just with as warm as it gets there for that. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
folks, I
don't
lived
do
in
it.
Phoenix, Arizona, and I think you're right. I wouldn't have attempted to try to do any smoking or any cooking in the daytime just for my own health because it's so damn hot at this time of year. But
No, dude.
another trick is
Something,
if you'll get some shade and maybe put a fan on it, you can dissipate some of that heat off that box pretty quick. But I think that's a lot of effort. When if you just wait till night, I think you might be a better shot. But tell us how to set it up, Bruce. I mean, Big Ron. So when you have one of these, what I want to smoke it. Let's go with brisket, folks. We're going to smoke a brisket. How would you set your pit boss up as you see it there? How would you set that up? And I'm about to throw up another picture here. Is this also what is that what the inside of yours looks like?
So that's what the inside of mine looks like. That's your burn pot, and his is going to have kind of the same idea for a burn pot. If I remember correctly, the one that he's using is going to have a pan that sits over it, though, that he can put some sort of a liquid in, rather it's a vinegar or waters or something to keep everything moist. So the first thing you're going to want to do when you're setting either one of these grills up, the setup's going to be pretty much the same. And please, if you've set yours up differently, I'd like to hear how you did yours too, because I'm always willing to learn. So you're going to pull everything out of it like this. You're going to fire it up the first time. You're going to make sure your heating element works, of course. Get a good burn. Make sure everything lights up good to go. And then you're going to let it go out. And then once it goes out, you're going to want to wipe everything down on the inside of that chamber. Everything that is metal with oil. Now, there's a lot of different theories on this. I like bacon grease. I like the natural fats. I think it gives the smoker a better flavor. And just so you guys know, I have done sideburn smokers before. I didn't start off on a pit boss. I actually started off on the old style like everybody else has. So I do know how to use a smoker. So what I like to do is I like to get the inside of it good and oiled down, and then don't put the griddles in or anything. Put the top back on it. And if Joe goes back to that last picture with the griddles in, you'll see a picture with the griddles, and you're going to have a picture of the burn cover that's in there.
If you don't mind me asking, while there's a little bit of a pause here, what oil do you use to oil it?
So you can use any variable.
Hold up for a second. Hey, Scorchey, we're getting a lot of kickback on your mic. Maybe back off from it a little bit. It's coming in pretty harsh. But you're asking what type of oil or grease do you want to season it with?
Yeah, so there's different types you can use. It's going to be personal preference. You'll see some people out there that will say use canola oil. Other people will say to use corn oil. Like I said, I prefer to use bacon grease. I think it gives it a flavor. I really do. It's like a cast iron skillet. So what's going to happen here is you're going to leave your cooking surfaces out, but you're going to put that cover back on, because that cover is going to be what distributes the heat on the inside. Now, you don't want to oil that stainless steel cover that you see in there. You're going to leave that just like it is. And you're going to heat that grill up slowly. You're going to bring it up to basically max temperature, about 500 degrees. And you're going to let it sit there for, I'd say, about an hour. And what that's going to do is that's going to heat up all that paint. It's going to heat up all the metal. It's going to expand it. That oil, everything you've put in there is going to start to seep into those crevices inside that metal. And then you're going to turn it off and walk away for a while, go have a nice bourbon, smoke a cigar, and let that grill come down to zero temperature naturally. And it's going to suck all that oil into the metal. Now, a lot of people will tell you that's all you got to do. I personally disagree with that. I do it again. I do it a second time. Now, the second time that I do it, I put my bottom griddles back in there, and I cover them from front to back, side to side, with bacon. And my wife calls it sacrificial bacon. And I put the bacon in there, and I bring it back up to temperature again with the bacon in there after I've oiled it a second time. And I let that bacon start to pop and deposit that bacon grease on the walls, on the griddles, on everything. And then turn it off, pull your bacon off so you can eat it, and then let it come back down to temperature again. Now, at that point, personally, I feel the grill is now ready to use to smoke for the first time. Joe, if you can go to the picture of all the dust.
The dirty one. Is that what you want me to show?
Yes,
you know,
sir.
I didn't have that loaded up. I thought that was not intentional. Let me go back and look.
No, that was actually intentional.
This guy here.
Because maintenance of your grill is very important with these things.
Well, I thought we were talking about setting it up, but we haven't gotten any meat yet.
No, we haven't gotten the meat yet. We're still doing the setup.
Here we go. All right, I'm with you. Let's go.
All right, so yours may not be this bad. This one's actually had some use. You can tell by the back wall that there's a good layer of seasoning on the back. But after about every third burn, you're going to want to get in here with a vacuum and just suck all this dust and everything out. Over time, that's eventually it's going to sop up with oil, and you don't really want that to happen because then it becomes a fire hazard. So every second or third cook that you do, or if you do a long cook, I've done some 18-hour cooks on mine. You're going to want to get in here. You're going to want to suck all that dust out. Now, one of the awesome things about where you live is you're in an extremely dry environment. So you're not going to have the same issue that I have. One of the issues I have living in North Florida is I have a lot of moisture. So I do have a tendency, sometimes I will get pellet expansion, and the pellets will expand inside the auger. I don't know if you're going to have that issue in Arizona with as dry as it is there. You're probably not going to get that pellet expansion. So, but this is definitely something that needs to be done every so often. If I remember correctly, the way yours is built, you've already got an internal seal around your door. But one of the things to look for, and that's also going to help with temperature regulation, is if you have any leaks around your doors, anywhere that any of your knobs go into the box, or any leaks around your stacks. You're going to want to make sure you seal those up one way or another. There is some grill seal out there, and I have suggested that to some of our other guys that have just started with their new grills to buy some of this sealant and put it around the doors to help seal those doors up to minimize the amount of smoke leakage. So then the next thing I would suggest, like I said, at night, because your temperature is so high out there. Another thing you can do is you can put some wet rags or wet towels on the smoke chamber to help bring that temperature of the metal down. I know yours is a square one, so it's really hard to do that. With the round ones, like I have, if it gets too hot here in Florida, I can throw a wet towel on top of it, and it will bring that metal temperature down and help cool the internal temperature of the chamber, especially if I want to do something like cheeses or something like that. So,
yeah, that's definitely a good idea. I realized I actually have a swamp cooler. I could probably point at it, like a decent sized one, the rolling, much like the smoker. I hadn't thought to blow a fan at it. That's actually a great idea.
Yeah, and if you get the system sealed up correctly, that blowing that fan onto that smoker is not going to dissipate the internal smoke, nor is it going to change the internal or the external too much. Joe, do you have that flavor profile I sent you?
Okay, you said flavor profile.
A picture of all the different woods and what they're good for.
Oh, okay. Yes, I've got that. That is this, right? Does that not look like the guide that's on your microwave for, like, if you want popcorn? This is the button you push, and
the exact same idea.
Guys, you gotta forgive Joe. He's a little bit old school. We're still trying to convince him that rubbing two sticks together isn't the best way to start a fire. But we're trying to get him into the 21st century. But he's coming around.
So this picture here, and I'm sure you've probably already seen it.
Proofs in the cook.
Yep, proofs in the cook. So this picture here is just kind of an idea of what each one of your woods will use. I've never actually seen the alder wood. Now, when you do your initial seasoning of the grill, and it sounds like you've already done a couple of burns on yours, the first wood that you use can really change the internal flavor profile of that grill. I tend to use either what they call the gourmet blend, or some people call a competition blend. And it's basically just a mix of everything. It's like hickory, mesquite, a little bit of apple. They toss a little bit of oak in there.
That's what I got.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one to use. So, and this is a pretty good level, a pretty good idea of what to use depending on what you're doing. Like cheeses, depending on how you want them to go. Because I remember you saying cheeses, you could use any one of these woods. I would not suggest using hickory or mesquite on a sweeter meat. What's that?
I was going to say they'd be too strong.
Yes, they would be too strong. Seafood, lamb, pork, basically a white meat. It's going to be very, very strong. Red meats is where you want to go with the hickories, the mesquites, maybe even the alder or the oak. It's gonna fit that meat better. Joe and I have had these discussions before, especially when it comes to brisket. Him and I agree that mesquite's pretty much the only way to go. I consider mesquite a spicy wood. It gives it kind of a spicy flavor. Hickory is also another really good one to use with any kind of a red meat. Also, it gives it that good deep earthy flavor to it. So, does any of that help you out?
Oh, definitely. I loved using mesquite. I mean, Arizona here, I can go out in the neighborhood and find logs that people have cut off their trees. Like, I've never had to buy too much mesquite wood. Like, can you find it?
Okay, well, let's
stick it
talk
out
about the
back,
pellets.
dry it out for summer.
Because we're talking about pellets here. I use round log mesquite. I'm from Texas. I don't have to buy it either. It's naturally available. But when I
Yep.
burn a piece of natural cordwood or split wood of mesquite, I'm burning the saps, I'm burning the sugars, I'm burning the bark, I'm burning everything that's involved in that wood. I'm smoking that, and I'm putting that in across into my meat. You guys are doing it with pellets. Now that's not the case. When we're talking about mesquite and hickory and all these woods that are listed on this grill guide here, that's where you go down and purchase a bag of pellets that have been extruded through a slurry and dried, extruded pellets that you're putting into your smoker. So tell me, how do you get the flavor of hickory and mesquite, Big Ron? And we got some other things we want to go to. We got about another 10 minutes on this segment. I probably can give another 15, but let's kind of get to the point where what temperature we're on a brisket. We're going to smoke it with hickory. So we got hickory smoke, and we're going to buy our hickory pellets. Is there a particular type of pellet that you need to buy
So
besides?
Pit Boss makes its own pellets. Everybody's pretty much the same if you honestly want to know the truth. Um, I really haven't seen a flavor difference between Kingsford, Pit Boss, Trigger. There's a couple of other Cuisinart. There's a couple out there. Their prices vary, but I don't think the flavor of the wood varies. I don't think the smell varies. I don't even think the thickness or the milkiness of the smoke varies. I think they're pretty much all the same. So you're going to get whatever wood you prefer. Bring your grill up to temperature, and then I set mine at 180. That's as low as I can get mine. I think he said he can get his down to 130. And if he
Yep.
if he fills his pan with water, he may be able to get it a little bit lower, or add some moisture to that to where he's not getting as much melt or much burn. But you're going to have, with mine, since it's a barrel smoker, you're going to have hot sides, just like any regular grill. His, since it's a box type, obviously the heat's coming from the bottom straight up, so he doesn't really have a hot or a cold side that I can think of. You don't have hot or cold sides, do you, Professor?
I haven't found them yet. I think about this here, about the way the last cook went for me. I think the middle, because down at the bottom, the middle is where I think the coolest part of it is, if there is a part, simply because at the bottom all the heat's there, but all of the heat so rising to the top, all the smoke is up there and everything else. So if I set it in the middle, it cooks slower. Like I got about another hour of it sitting out there before it hit temperature in the middle, simply because of the heat traveling as opposed to the heat sitting up at the top with it or down at the
Gotcha.
bottom where it's generated.
With the way convection works, you may find that the center of the rack is warmer versus the outer edges. Since the
Yeah.
center is going to be your hot convection up the center, then the cool air will sink down the sides. So you may find your outer edges are cooler, so that may help you with some of your daytime cooks, where you're worried about temperature. But with a brisket on mine, and I'm sure it'll work the same for yours, what I do is part of the bacon that I use will actually show the hot spots on the grill, because I'll see where the bacon is cooking more than where the bacon's not cooking.
Yep.
Um,
It's a good idea.
so I will set my brisket to the cool side for a while, and try to keep as much smoke for the first handful of hours in that chamber as possible, to get that nice deep penetrated ring that I've shown pictures of in the past. And then I will move the brisket over to the other side of the grill, the warmer side of the grill, so I can get more airflow across it, to help evaporate some of those liquids that are on the grill to start building that bark. And this is where Joe and we butt heads a little bit, but we both agree on it that you have to evaporate that liquid. And the only way you're going to really get a good bark on that brisket, and it does take me a lot of work to get a bark on my briskets through a Pit Boss, is you've got to have something that's going to build up a caramelization on the outer side of that brisket to be able to deposit that smoke on, versus the logged mesquite or hickory that you can get in whatever state that you live in, Arizona and Texas more specifically, has still got the barks on it. It's still a little bit wet. The moisture content of that wood is a lot higher, so you're still going to be able to get a lot of those natural sugars and liquids that are in that wood deposited onto that meat, and you're going to be able to build that bark a lot better. And that's where the big difference is between a side cook and a pellet smoker of any brand versus, Tiger, Rectech, Pit Boss, Kingsford, is you're not going to have that same ability with that smoke, because you're having a cleaner smoke, I guess is the way to put it. You don't have the barks, you don't have the sugars. Your moisture level of that pellet is absolute. It's almost zero. because they're basically dealing with a particleized wood. They're extruding it at a high pressure. And the natural particles in the wood is what holds it together. There's no glues or anything in there, so there's no worry about that. But this gives you the ability to build that smoke ring. It's just building that bark is where it really comes in. You got to really have that finesse for it. I'm not sure how well you could do on your box smoker. It might be one of those things where you put it at the low end at the bottom to get that smoke to come through the meat. And then when you get to a point where you want to try to start building that bark, maybe move it to an upper shelf to where you're closer to the stack. That may be an idea to look at also.
Well, let me jump in when we start talking about building the bark. Professor, how long, if you've got a brisket, how many hours of smoke do you want before you start trying to raise your internal temperature? And I may be talking.
So you're trying to think the last one.
That's what I do. I try to keep mine at somewhere between 130, 140 degrees internal temperature for 7 to 8 hours.
Yep.
So we get 7 to 8 hours of smoke on it. Now, once I get to 7 to 8 hours of smoke, then I want to wrap it in parchment paper or foil, and I want to start raising the temperature inside of it. But by that time, I should have evaporation off my meat, which my bark should have already started kicking. You should see bark, in my opinion. You should see bark between the first and third hour forming. If you don't see bark in the first and third hour, then you might be too wet. You may not have enough ventilation, in other words, draft moving through there to get the moisture off the meat. And I think that you have problems. And I think it's why you don't see good bark in pellet smokers. I think your draft is one of the issues. I don't know if it's heat. There could be some sugar in the smoke and what we talk about between pellet wood and regular wood. But I think the biggest factor is that if you can figure out a way to draft that smoke out faster, in other words, it move quicker across the meat to move the moisture that's vaporizing on the surface, move it away. I think you'll build bark faster and get more flavor in your meat. But I think I asked you a question and talked over the top of you. But where do you try to be, and for how long do you try to be on your smoke side?
Like you were saying, at about 130 usually, and here it depends on when I'm doing it. Like this time of year, it's 5 or 6 hours. It's going to be at 130, and then it'll cut time off of it this time of year very quickly. Then I don't have to put a lot of coal on it. Like I said, it smolders. I throw the wet chips on. I throw the wet chunks in, and just keep the smoke moving over it after that. But yeah, usually by the 6th or 7th hour, I'm wrapping it and letting it go.
And that's with your traditional side smoker, right?
Yep, it's a side smoker. It's not a smoker box, literally just on a barrel grill. Like I've got to build when I'm smoking, I build basically a crush washer out of aluminum from just letting all the smoke out. Like it's not built to be a smoker. It's a smoker box.
It's improvised.
It's improvised smoker basically. I'm using foil to maintain smoke inside the chamber for the most part.
I like it. That's a man who knows what he's doing.
Hey, real quick, we were talking about how to find your hot and cold spots on a pit boss or a pellet grill. The best way that I found is take a bunch of bagels, put them in half, face side down, and turn your smoker on, and you can actually literally see which pieces of bread are heating up pretty quickly, other ones.
That's a great idea,
folks,
Jason.
Let's welcome Jason. Let's welcome Jason from Minnesota in 3D Response to the show. And I'm not sure, what is a bagel?
A bagel is a piece of bread, Joe.
Oh, a bagel. Okay, I thought you said a bagel. I didn't know if there's something was unaware of. Y'all had in Minnesota and kept it to yourselves. Nobody else knew about this.
That's a dog. I do not recommend putting a dog on a grill.
No, that's a beagle.
Oh, I was way off. Sorry about that.
Jeez.
Hey, Joe, I sent you 2 more pictures.
I thought it was something you carried in groceries in, but you know what? That's right. You could even take sliced white bread, anything that will give you an indication on where heat's at, where heat's not at it. I can do it with the first smoke on a brisket. I can watch it and see where. In fact, I've done it with vets, and I did it with our friend John Cox. On their smoke, with pictures, I could tell them where their hot spots are. But if you look where your draft is, where your stack is, a lot of folks think where your stack is, it's going to be cooler. That's actually where it's going to be hotter. All the heat's moving to that area to get out. So if you're getting too hot, try to get away from that stack as much as possible.
Well, let me ask you guys with pellet smokers, because I know some pellet grills, they got the super smoke setting. My smoke setting, it's not the high end pellet grill, but my smoke setting is about 175. Do you guys have the ability to control the pellet grill down lower than that, or what do you guys do for pellet grills to keep the temperature down? Right, and I know we just covered all the in the sun and whatnot, but do you guys even have the ability to maintain a temp lower than?
It depends
Yeah.
on which grill you have. Professor, go ahead. Go ahead and talk about your grill.
Oh yeah, so I was just gonna say, like, part of the reason I chose mine because I could never, even in the winter, I really can't maintain good heat that I would like to. Other things I'd like to smoke, like a slow smoked salmon, cheeses, cheesecake. I've tried. I can't get to it on my improvised, side mount grill smoker. I can get good results with anything else. So I went with the Pit Boss that went down to 130, and it's got digital control. It is cheating. I understand what Joe is saying there. I feel like I'm cheating with it still. Okay, I understand, but it's literally just you press the button. It's got a little knob. It says turns it down. It's all digital control. It's very modern, as you could say. So it's pretty cool. And it'll go down, and I can turn it down to 130 on with that. Now, one thing I don't have that I've been reading about, what some pit bosses have, is the ability to change the P setting, which is how often the auger puts more in the burn pit or in the little burn cup, and that will allow it to smolder, like the other pellets smolder longer, as opposed to more pellets coming in and just bringing the heat up from burning. That one I haven't figured out if I can adjust that on mine yet or not. I don't think I can, though.
So
Okay.
one of mine does have a P setting. I was gonna get into that. So the one I'm currently using, if I remember correctly, I don't have a P setting on it. I have a smoke setting, and it basically bottoms the temperature out at about 175. Now I have another one in the garage that I haven't used. Honestly, I needed a bigger cook surface. Uh, I was starting to cook stuff where I just didn't have enough room. I could go from a P setting of 1 to 5. The higher that number, the bigger the delay was between the augering, and it would allow that to smolder longer. You're 100% correct in what you're saying. The only caveat to that is depending on what the P setting was and what the ambient temperature outside was, it would actually go out. You would have an issue with your burner going out, and then you would end up with an over auger, and you just have a big pile of chips in there. So
Well,
this picture on the screen that you're seeing is one of the last briskets I did on my smoker. I think this was a 10-hour smoke. I was able to build up a pretty decent bark, got a good little smoke ring on there, and was able to keep it really juicy.
And I was going to ask about the turning the temperature down when you're in a real hot environment, because yeah, like if it's trying to keep the temperature down to 130 and it's 110 outside, is it even putting any flame out? And you answered my question on that.
So it does and it doesn't. The way that these pit bosses work, and I'm not 100% sure about Professors, but the way that mine works is I've got a heating element about the size of your thumb,
Yeah,
and that it'll heat up and just smolder them and just smolder. And what it will do is it'll cycle a fan that's on the inside, and depending on how much this fan cycles, if it cycles long enough, it'll ignite the wood. Or it will cycle just long enough to smolder the wood. And it's smoldering is what we're going for in the first hour or three, before we start really, dumping heat into that to start getting the caramelization of the sugars on the exterior of the meat.
Well, and that fan that you're talking about, that is, like, Joe gives us very, very reasonable crap for our pellet smokers, and I try to throw some back at him. But one of the reasons, aside from the bark, like Ron has said before, you can substitute the sugars that the bark usually puts off in the pitch from natural wood that gets off-put during the pellet extrusion process. But the big problem is that pellet smokers are mostly convection, if not all of them, and you really need that draft to get real good bark.
I think here's what I'm gonna say about pellet smokers. Then I want to move on to Scorchy, and let's get into some hot sauce, some hot things to talk about. But guys, don't go away. We're going to come back and Professor, I want to talk to you about smoking cheeses and some ideas that I have that you can do there that won't actually involve either device. Well, directly either device that you've got there that you can smoke those rather quickly. And the way I prefer to smoke the cheeses and things that can't take the heat for very long. I think on a pellet grill, I think Ron's got it dialed in right. You're right, Professor. You're going to have to get your temperatures right. When ambient temperature is heating your cook chamber to 200 degrees, and you're trying to be at you're trying to keep it down to 160 for an internal temperature of 140, then that is difficult. But there's some things you can do. You can move air across the top of it. You can try to move air out of it. Things like a hair dryer. I know it sounds weird, but on your intake vent down below, you can hit a hair dryer on there every couple hours or every hour or so to push some of that heat out and give it a chance to build back up. You can open the bonnet, let the door be open. This is going to extend your smoke time. The only time you want to count for smoke on meat is when doors closed and smoke's encapsulated the chamber. But there are times that I've done it. I have to do it with side mount smokers when my temperature gets too hot or I got my fire flares up. There's times I'll open the bonnet because what I'm doing is I'm baking off heat. I'm off gassing the heat that's inside the box so I can keep my temperature down. Because folks, when we're smoking anything, it's time on smoke. We don't want if you want a rare steak, you want it to be 160 degrees at service internal temperature. So if you don't want overcooked meat, then you've got to keep that down low. If you want a low and smoking time for a brisket, it's 8 hours. I want 8 hours, and my temperature inside my meat doesn't go over 140 degrees. There's many ways to do that. Put your thinking caps on. An internal thermometer that gives you a digital read. Bluetooths are excellent to kind of watch that. Whether you're using a pellet smoker, whether you're using a side mount smoker, or you're using even an electric smoker that we might even talk about one of those towards the end of the show. Those are the elements that you're looking for when you're smoking beef. And if you want to get that nice rind or bark on the outside of the meat that's blackened, you can see it in the picture here with our good friend Ron. Let me see if I can get that back up. You can see some of that the darkness there. That it looks black and burnt, but it's not. That's nothing but tasty goodness. In order to make that good and thick is that you want evaporation. What happens is all the juices that are internally in the meat, the spritzing that you're putting on top of the meat when you spritz it, when that evaporates, the solids that are inside that liquid are deposited like little snowflakes on top of the meat surface, and they build up over time of smoke. So if you get 8 hours of smoke, you've got good evaporation. You can literally have 1/8 of an inch of bark there that is the most delicious thing that you can taste. But there's your keys you're looking for smoking. I think it doesn't matter whether it's a pellet grill or any other type of grill. Those are the elements that you're looking for. And also, I'll tell you, Professor, is that find you some red clay bricks and stack them in your backyard. That might be a good heat tamp for you. That you could put those on a lower rack. They'll absorb the heat slowly, and when they get hot, you might be able to pull those off and replace them with some cool ones while those sit on the outside in the shade and cool down. That might be a good heat tamp for you to try to keep your heat down. Or get you some beer, my friend, and do it like the rest of us. A beer in a lawn chair and start that about 8 o'clock and do it all night.
Not a bad idea. I'm actually, that might happen before the end of the month.
Well, this is not a one-time invitation for you. We'd like for you to join us, and we'd like to keep up with your journey on doing this because it's like this for every one of us. If I were to get a new smoker tomorrow, I would go through the same trials and tribulations that everybody else is going through, finding my hot spots. If you've done it more than once or done it a few times, and you're smoking literally with a tinfoil bonnet and pushing smoke in, so you know what you're doing. You just got to figure out how to do it with a pellet smoker. And Big Ron,
Yep.
we're always with DMs. You've got anything we'd like to keep up with? Keep us some photographs and keep us in it. But guys, I want to go to Scorchey. Scorchey is here with us. Scorchey has he does his own hot sauce making, grows his own ingredients. And I've got an idea
Hell yeah.
that I want to talk to Scorchey about once we get through some of his hot sauce. But you've told us a little bit about your hot sauce of Scorchey with that you grow your own ingredients, that you like it, you like the flavor first, heat second, you like it to sneak up and surprise you a little bit, but you like it to be hot. What is your so you have a line of hot sauces that are available that we send you an email? Can we get some?
Well, yeah, I hand make all my hot sauces, so I don't mass produce them like I told you earlier. So just getting my website set up. Like I said, this is all brand new. This is a startup company. It's just myself right now. But I did link my email on my profile there, so you guys can email that. I will send you hot sauce. Right now, I'm currently making two brands. One is just a straight hot sauce that you can use on just about anything, and the second one is some people call it a sweet hot sauce. And what I do is I mix different berries in it in the hot sauce itself, like a raspberry, a blackberry, blueberry. Excuse me, and that one's
All right, hold,
actually
hold
good
up. Tap,
for.
tap the brakes. You can't run across putting some berries in some hot sauce. Now, so when we talk about hot sauce, what's your base pepper in that hot sauce that you put the berries in? What brings this to heat?
Well,
Or is it more than one?
it depends on how hot you want it. My base pepper is the habanero, and if you want extreme heat, I go with the Carolina Reaper because that is currently the hottest, except for a new one that has come out. It's called Dragon's Breath, and I have not come across that one yet. As soon as I get it, I will start making hot sauce with that. Um, I'm trying to remember the Kelvin rating on that Dragon's Breath. I don't know it at the offhand, but it is the hottest pepper recorded.
Was
It
it
was
Kelvin or Scoville?
or Scoville. I'm sorry, Scoville. My fault. The same gentleman that produced the Carolina Reaper has come out with the Dragon's Breath pepper as well, but he has not put it out to the public as far as I know yet. But I would love to get my hands on some of those seeds.
I'm seeing 2 million Scovilles.
That sounds about right because I think if I remember right, the Carolina Reaper is 1.5.
Yes, sir. With some getting up to about 1.67.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and honestly, I have not come across a pepper that I find hot. Maybe because I've been eating them so long, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I can literally eat a pickled Carolina Reaper with no problem.
I
And I'll tell you, I'm the opposite. I like the flavor of pepper, but the heat to me ruins it. I'm a mild guy.
You
Well,
just got
see,
to burn out
you
some
would be
taste
you would
buds,
be
Joe.
more
You got to
yeah,
burn out
you would
some
be more
taste buds.
along
We're gonna keep
you'd be
talking
more
about
along
this.
the line
on you.
of a Serrano.
Nah, yeah. Well, I'm with you, Scorchy. Because I was going to ask you how hot you make them. Because I like the Apocalypse Scorpion, Carolina Reapers, and Ghost Peppers. Ghost Peppers even seem tame to me now, so I think I may have
Yeah,
permanently damaged my taste buds. But
and I think that's where I'm at as well.
man,
But it's fun.
I would love to order some of your hot sauce. I'm gonna have to check you out.
Okay, yeah, I'm making a new batch this weekend. So, and it's unfortunately for now, it's limited on the batches that I make because I grow all my own ingredients and you only grow so many peppers per month. So typically I get about anywhere from 20 to 30 bottles of hot sauce out of batch. So it's
Put me on
kind
the
of a
way.
first come first serve for now.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so if we want some of that, though, we can get you at the scorcheysauce.com or Scorchy
It's
Gmail.
yeah. For now, it's better to shoot me an email through the email because the scorcheysauce.com. One of the gentlemen, he's a fellow vet on X, is setting up that website for me right now.
Got you. You said fellow vet. Are you a veteran?
Yeah. Yes, I am.
Talk to us about that. We like veterans here.
Oh, I appreciate that. Well, I joined in '89, went through '96, was in the Gulf War, the war that wasn't a war, and
Well,
that
now,
was
do we have a branch that you joined?
I was in the Army. And the reason why I say the war that wasn't a war is thank you to the Air Force for bombing the heck out of everybody and making it a clean slate for us all. We did still have some issues, but they were readily taken care of. But yeah, I do not regret serving. I volunteered to do it, and I would do it again in a heartbeat.
And I appreciate the way you did that, Scorchy. The way it works is that if a man was in the Army, he'll tell you. If he wasn't in the Army, there's no reason embarrassing him asking him what branch he was in. So I appreciate the way you did that. You saved Big Ron, who's a Navy veteran, from actually putting that out there. Myself, I'm an Army veteran, also served in the first Gulf War and a couple of others. But yeah, appreciate your service and appreciate you being a vet, and we do appreciate that on the Night Court show and our smoke show. So if folks want to order your product right now, they can get it in limited batches because obviously you can only grow so much. That means you only have so much ingredients. They only produce so many bottles or jars at a time. But so folks, if you want one, hit him up on the email. It's at the bottom of the screen here. Hit him up on the email and get your order in now. So I think it's probably going to be first come, first serve on it. But I want to move into something else with an interest topic of what Scorchey could do. Now, Scorchey, when you're making these hot sauces, is it a dry? Do you dry anything, or is everything wet when you like pulverize it and how you make sauces? Is it wet
No,
or a dry mix?
no, I do everything wet. The only thing dry that I do is when I strain my sauces, I do save the strainings to create a rub for meats. That's the only thing dry I do.
That's what we want to talk about, my friend. So these the stuff that comes out, what is the strainings? Are these little seeds? I mean, is it super hot?
What? Again, I'm a bad person to ask about heat level because I have not come across anything that's hot yet. But for the normal person, yeah, it would be hot. But again, I make different levels of heat. For people like yourself, Joe, that doesn't like something real hot, I do make a Serrano version, which is about, if I remember right, I think that's about 14,000 Scoville. It's not real hot, and I mean it gives enough of a bite to make you know it's there.
Well,
But
just for reference, do you happen to know? I don't know off the top of my head. Do you know what a jalapeno is? Because I think everyone knows what a jalapeno is.
Are you asking me from Texas if I know what a jalapeno is?
Of course, I'm not asking you. I'm asking Scorchy.
No.
Does he know where?
I was a bit offended there.
It's called a piece of candy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's because jalapenos aren't hot, but I think everyone's tried them. If someone thinks that jalapeno is hot, I kind of discard their opinion. But do you know where that falls on the Scoville scale?
It is real low. Offhand, I don't know where it's at, but I know it's real low. It's one of the lowest peppers there is.
I'm gonna search that and come back on that. But keep going. Sorry for stepping on you.
Oh, no worries. But what I was saying, Joe, is that I make a Serrano hot sauce that is not hot. It's I'd say it's a very low end heat, and it would be perfect for what you're looking for. And the rubbings on that would add just a nice tinge to your meat, but not enough to make you think, wow, it's too hot, I don't want to eat it. And that kind of goes back to what I was telling you about with the smoke and the ghost pepper. Is that what I found is that when you do smoke peppers, it takes a lot of the heat out. Surprisingly, I don't know why, but it does.
Absolutely, it does. Yep.
I know why.
Real quick, the jalapeno falls between 4,000 and 8,500 on the Scoville scale. So just to give people.
Okay, what I'm looking at, folks, when we talk about a rub, I'm looking at imparting a flavor into a 14, 15 pound piece of beef, or imparting a flavor into a 5 or a 10 pound turkey or chicken, and to have that flavor infused with smoke. That's what I like about smoking. I like that flavor is not something that's some salt and pepper dashed on it. I didn't get it because I marinated it into some other flavor to flavor the meat. That I infuse that flavor in there through a smoking process. And when I look at rubs, and the reason I bring this up, my friend Scorchy, is that if you could put together a rub and then do you think you could add the right types of sugars? Because a good rub needs a certain amount of some sugars, certain amount of salt to it to be able to get it to make a good bark. And when I say a bark, bark is black as coal when it's done correctly. I'll pull a picture up here in a second. But a good bark is black as coal, looks like it's burnt, but it has an exquisite flavor to it. And if we've got a good rub that's got a good balance of flavor to it, a lot of that flavor is going to be lost in the smoke. A lot of the heat that I think you put onto a brisket, if I smoke it for 8 hours, I think you're right. I'm going to lose some of the heat in that smoking process, but I'm going to pick up some outstanding flavors in the building of the bark. So when you do these trainings, do you actually sell this this rub, or is it something that you're just kind of working with?
Actually, right now I just give it away to people, but so I'd be more than happy to give you some. When it comes to the smoking, uh, at this point, I am basically a high school baseball player sitting here amongst the New York Yankees team because I mean, I'm just in awe at the knowledge you gentlemen have on smokers. It blows me away. I'd be more than happy to send you a couple packets of the rub that I have, and you can play with it and do what you want with it.
I tell you what, I want one, and I want you to send one to Big Ron as well. We'll get you a DM on the
Hold on,
addresses.
don't leave me on that.
Who?
Don't
Who
leave
was
me
that
out.
speaking?
On that.
Who is that speaking? I don't.
B-Wayne.
Somehow we got somebody here. I don't know who this guy is. Who's this B Wayne?
Yeah,
Get him out of
right.
here.
Well, we'll send you some jalapeno rub and see if you like that.
But what I'd like to do is I've got a little bit of a mix, homegrown over time mix of the type of sugars that I like into my rub to help build a good bark, and see if maybe we can add your flavors together and put something together that might actually be pretty marketable that other folks may want. But we'll get together afterwards and do that. But I'm absolutely interested in that. And my next thing is that I've got a good friend in Minnesota. Jason knows him as well, and he's a Minnesotan, and I guess they eat bagels there. But he's got a friend that has a freeze dryer that they can put a liquid in there. It goes through a process, it freeze dries and takes all the liquid out of it, and you can crush it up and make it a granule powder. And we were talking about your hot sauce today over the phone, and he brings up a point. He said, "Well, I wonder if we could take one of Scorchey's hot sauces that we like, put it into a freeze dryer, freeze dry it, break it down into a granule powder, and then do what I was saying. Actually, add some sugars and things to it to make it a good rub, using that as a rub." Do you think that's something that would work, Scorchy? Have you ever heard of that? Anybody else? And by the way, anybody can comment on this. This is just something that we were talking about over the phone and dreaming up. We do have access to one. If we had a sample, we could actually do it this weekend. But if it's something we want to try, we can actually pull this off. But what do y'all think about that?
I would definitely like to hear the freeze dried. I grew Carolina Reapers, Ghost Peppers, and Apocalypse, and I just sun dried them and ground them all down into a powder, and it is spicy. But I'm gonna throw it on the brisket 4th, and I'll let you guys know how much it reduces the heat. But freeze dried, I would definitely recommend he tries it.
I'd be willing to give it a shot. I've never even thought about it. Like I said, this is all, getting this whole thing going is all new to me. So,
Well, and I'll tell you, Scorchy, when you were in the space, when you and I met, that's the first thing that I thought of is that how could I take what you're doing there and put together? I get the question all the time is what's a good rub? What's a good rub? And I really don't have a good one out there, a store bought one. I want to look at the ingredients. It's got enough sugar in it. I'm good with it pretty much after that. Cause I'm honestly, I could do a brisket that you'll talk about for years with just salt and pepper and it maybe a little sugar on there and get my smoke time right. I will put together something that, you won't forget very soon. I promise you. So it's interesting that we've got you here that we might be able to put together a rub that's got a little more flavor to it than you can find in a regular grocery store. I'll tell you, the ones you find in the grocery store, your Lawry's. There's one called Tex Joy that I actually like used called Tex Joy, but there are none of them out there that is that in flavor is not imparted on the meat. It's not there. The smoke is going to overpower it. I do use it as a base because I want some sort of a base to build up my bark on top of the meat. But other than that, that's all a rub is to me. But everybody wants to know what the rub is, and if the rub is got a critical point to the meat. I say it doesn't, but I think it could if we put together the right kind of flavors on it. So I'm definitely going to DM and let's do some exchanging on some of your throwaways and stuff that you're producing in your batches, and see if we can't get something going on that for sure. But
I'd be more than happy to give it a shot.
sounds good. What do you think, Big Ron?
Yeah, I think it sounds like a great idea. And now that I think about it with some of the flavor profiles that he's talking about, I think if maybe we use a cane sugar or maybe even a brown sugar, since the brown sugar's got molasses mixed in with it, we might be able to adjust that profile to where it's going to give us a good glaze and a bark on there, but still leave Scorchy's flavor profile in there from the peppers. I think it's a good idea.
Hold up. Y'all forget where I paused this man when he's talking about putting berries in there. Now, I've never had a berry in a rub.
Well, now that's what I said. That's the additional hot sauce. Just so you know, Ron, I don't use sugars in my hot sauces. I use molasses in place of the sugars to bring out more of the flavor of the peppers. The hot sauce that you're talking about, Joe, with the berries, that's the one that a lot of people think that I'm crazy for. I use that in my coffee. I put it on my ice cream. I use it on white meats like fish, chicken, anything, uh, pork. It adds a tremendous flavor. It brings out the flavor of white meats.
Did
That's
you
what I
just
use
say
my
you put
berry
that in
sauce.
coffee?
Oh yeah, once you put my hot sauce in your coffee, I guarantee you will never drink a straight cup of coffee again. I guarantee
Look,
it.
I almost want to talk about this on some DMs in a private conversation, but I think that if you were to add the berries the way you're adding to the heat, the mixture that you're doing, you're absolutely right. I wasn't even talking about chicken, but you brought it up. But any white meat, any lighter meat with lighter smoke, I think that you can put that on there. I think you can bring out a flavor profile in the bark that you couldn't be matched anywhere else. Now, beef, when you're talking about a harsh smoke with hickory, harsh smoke with mesquite, you're gonna be hard. You're gonna be hard pushed to try to maintain whatever flavor your rub is all the way through 8 hours of smoke. The smoke is gonna be overpowering. It's gonna take it over. But now when you start
Well,
talking
that's
alderwood, applewood, some of these lighter woods, and you're smoking chickens and you're smoking turkeys and poultries, fowl birds, game birds like quail, and you start adding some blackberries, these berries mixed in with your heat, I don't know. That could be game changer right there, my friend.
well, and that's why I came up with my sandwich spread was for the red meats because it's I'm bored with standard condiments, so I had to come up with something to liven up the flavor of red meats. That's why I came up with that. And again, I don't have a name for it, so if anybody's got any suggestions, that'd be great. I'll send you a sample, let you try it out, see what you think. Right now, I'm just currently calling it Whiskey Tango Foxtrot because military gentlemen, you know what that is.
Yes, sir.
Well, it's a what the F, man. You never know. But you know what? And I'll tell you, Scorchy, we just gotten started with this smoke show. We do a night court show. It's been pretty popular. We're just gotten started with the smoke show, and then I had a little medical issue that's kind of dropped me out where I hadn't been very active like I should be on this. But I think I'm back in it. We're going to be back running every Wednesday. But we're going to start going into these guys that have just picked up smoking. Bruce Wayne is a pellet smoker. He's not into like Texas style smoking, but he's getting into it. James is about to pick him up the smoker and about to go at it full time. Jason, he's got uh, bags in Minnesota they're smoking, so he needs help there. But he's going to start picking. But we're going to start picking a product like do pork or do chicken and move through it. I'd like you maybe walk this journey with us and let's try some of your experiments that you've got. Maybe some knowledge that we have on how to put maybe some more ingredients to your dry rubs and see what we can come up with. You know what you've also got to it's also a flavor out there, folks. Let's don't forget it's marinating. You can marinate your meat and smoke it. I'm not a fan of it because I think it inhibits it makes it more difficult to get a bark to grow because you got a lot more moisture to evaporate off of. I like a dry rub, but we'll also be trying some of those. So we're going to be doing a lot of experimenting over the next few weeks throughout the summer. And at least till Thanksgiving, I think is how far we've given this out. We're going to do a big turkey show for our Thanksgiving show. But uh, I'd like for you to maybe take this journey with us and let's try out some of your products because it sounds like you really know what you're doing. I'm putting those together. When you said berry with the hot sauce, and I'm a hot sauce guy, to be honest with you. Yeah, I can take it or leave it. It's great. But I would absolutely try something that had a berry flavor to it. I think that would be very unique, and I'm intrigued, super intrigued. But Big Ron, what would you do if we get some of this rub in? So you're saying you would go brown or cane sugar versus
Well, I
brown
was thinking brown sugar or cane sugar just because it's a natural sugar and the way it's going to caramelize. But given the fact that Scorchy is using natural berries, those berries already have those sugars in them, and they're going to be a cleaner sugar that's probably going to caramelize a lot better. So he's really intrigued me, and getting some of those flavor profiles, especially with berries, like he was saying, he's got a sandwich spread that he's using for some of the lighter colored meats. A berry flavored hot sauce on maybe a smoked chicken or some smoked pork would that's really got my curiosity peaked. I think they could be really really good.
I definitely got my curiosity. What about Professor Savage? Did you
Oh
did you
yeah,
get him
that sounds.
more than you bargained for on the show?
Oh, Absolutely. I mean, and I like a lot what he's talking about there. I can see what you're saying about the caramelization with the sugars from the berries, like a blueberry, some chicken, and I'm trying to think of what I would do with that. Like you got that like the habanero there, some blueberries. You've got that heat, and you've got that very unique sugariness of a berry that it's hard to Kate in something else. Like you can't find that.
Right.
And,
Now add your smoke to it.
yeah, I think that's
Brain is
yeah,
twirling,
and
isn't it?
you add like an apple wood with it or something on a
Right?
chicken.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Applewood or maybe a peach.
we've got Fidji
Ooh.
with us, and she's saying blackberry and pork. Heck yeah, that's from Alabama, folks.
Ooh.
That's the lower LA, lower Alabama. She's I think you know what I think with pork, and I think with the lighter meats, I think the berry absolutely would bring that out.
That sounds
Yeah, I
very
agree
good.
with you, Fidji. Good job. Okay, guys, we're about to move into. Oh, hang on. She says Georgia. Thought you're from Alabama. Okay, anyway, Georgia. Fair enough. Works out. Um, I want to go into beef ribs. Now, we had a question from our good friend Shane out of Minnesota about what's the best way to do a beef rib, and that a lot of folks can't really get the flavor out of the beef rib, and it's not
Yeah.
something that they enjoy. I disagree. I think a beef rib is better than pork, but I'm a beef guy. I'm from Texas. Anything I smoke
I
is
agree.
beef is the first on my menu, but pork is fine. But pork is pork, and I'll be honest with you, pork's not very
Pork is
hard to smoke.
nope.
Yeah,
Pork is
it
easier.
yeah,
Smoked rib.
it takes smoke easy. You know, it is what it is. Smoke is fine on pork, and I'm not against it. But when we talk about a beef rib, I don't think you can beat it. So here's what I say about a beef rib: you take your beef rib and you don't have them cut; they're still in the slab, and you want to trim a good portion of the top meat off of that. And you want to take any silver sides that might be left on the bone side on the underside. Folks, you don't know what I'm talking about. It's a silver skinny thing like skin. You want to peel that off, remove that. But you want to trim a good portion. I would say at least 75% of the fat off the top of that's on the layer on the surface of the beef rib piece. You want to take that off. Put that into a pan. Then you want to smoke. Now, and the reason I say that you still got you got other layers of fat that are inside that piece of meat between the bone. There's in the meat. There's fat. There's also grain of fat that runs through there. So you have plenty of fat to render down and make them tender. And you got to realize too, you've got a bone, so it's going to smoke fast. It's going to get tender pretty quick. It's not like smoking a 15-pound slab of brisket that you've got to get penetrated through. So keep that in mind. A lot of folks leave a lot of the fat on there. I say you don't. I think it makes it greasy. I think it takes it away, but it also spoils a good portion of a good trick in this. So you take those little pieces of trimmings and you're going to put them in a little pan, little pot, something that you're going to be able to put in the smoke chamber with it because you're going to render that down at the same time, separate from the beef rib. Then you put your beef rib in. You put I like salt and pepper. Now there's there's a lot of things Scorchey is talking about, but a dry rub. But let's say right now, just salt and pepper, coarse pepper and coarse salt. I'm going to work that in there on all sides of the rib, top, bottom, the sides, with some gloves on. You're going to work that into the meat real good. Then you're going to put it on, and you want to keep this low. You want to keep your smoke on there low. You want to smoke for about 2 hours. You don't really need much more than that. It's not a big piece of meat. Doesn't take long to get penetrated. I think you hit about what you're going to hit in about 2 hours. But your internal temperature, throw your probe in between the meat, between the ribs, on probably the higher side, the fatter side. And you want to keep that. You want to keep that lower than 130, 140. It wouldn't go over 140. Even if I get close to 140, I get worried. I'm going to start opening the bonnet and start letting it cool out and gas off. So I'm going to keep it low, and I'm going to cook it for, like I say, 2 hours or so. Somewhere in that 2 hours, my fat is rendered down into pretty much a liquid in my little separate container. There's all this beef fat that's there. You can add a little bit of hot sauce to that. You can add a little barbecue sauce to it. I don't do anything to it. I leave it the way it is. But I'm going to pull my beef rib off. I'm going to wrap it in parchment paper. I like parchment paper over foil just because I do. I can't tell you one is better than the other. but I feel like I get a better cookout in parchment, and I feel like I keep maybe some of the flavors in better with parchment paper. But you're going to wrap it in parchment paper. Before you seal it up, you're going to take a little bit of those drippings that you've rendered down. You're going to pour that over the top of the rib, and now you're going to make your final fold on your parchment paper and seal it up. Put it back into the cooker, and you're going to spritz the outside of that, just the top part of the parchment paper. If it's foil, don't have to do this, but parchment paper, you're going to spritz the outside of that. Just kind of seals it in. And you're going to put it down. Now you're going to let your temperature rise up, and you're going to cook this out. You're going to get up to about 160 degrees internal temperature, 160, 165. Pull it off. It's still going to cook for a few more minutes after that, and then you're done. Now you can get some barbecue sauce. You can get jarred barbecue sauce. If Scorchey puts together some barbecue sauce, you can buy that too, and you can put that on the table. I use barbecue sauce to see how well my smoke is. If they use the barbecue sauce, I did something wrong. If I've got plenty of barbecue sauce left, that means I did something correct. My flavor should be in there from everything that I just did on the meat. When it comes to a beef rib, that's what you want to do. Folks want to start putting barbecue sauces on it, or they want to brush them. Like pork ribs, you want to brush them constantly. You don't need to do that. Keep your heat low and your smoke thick for about 2 hours. And keep your internal temperature low for 2 hours. Now, like I say, you'll probably be the internal temperature at 160 once you wrap it and put it back in there, literally in another 20 minutes or so, depending on your smoker. But you're going to get in there pretty quick and get your smoke up. We've got old John Cox here with us. What's up, John?
Good evening, everybody. How is everyone?
We're doing well. Going over beef ribs, but from that point though, you will be able to pull your beef ribs apart with your fingers. They're going to be juicy. They're going to have a taste all the way through them. The salt on all meat, when it comes to salting, that salt is what brings the flavor out. I don't want to put enough salt on that I taste salt in the end. I want to put enough salt on that I taste the flavor of the smoke that's I've got into the meat. But that's beef ribs. Now, Big Ron, I know you do ribs. Professor, I bet you've got your recipe on ribs, and Jason, all you guys got recipes on ribs, but I'd like to hear them. But that's my recipe on a beef rib. Pretty simple, but it is very effective. I've never had anybody throw a bone back at me that still had meat on it.
Well, it's kind of funny because I just did beef ribs tonight. Really, the only thing I would change with what you're saying, and I don't even think I would change it. I think you overlooked it. Letting your beef come up to room temperature really does help it take smoke, and it helps the way it cooks. If you put it on that grill cold, that meat's is gonna be cold. It's gonna be tight, and it's not gonna want to accept the smoke like it should. But I'm with you. I use a basic seasoning for mine. Salt and pepper is obviously for beef is the basis of it. And yeah, I agree. 2-3 hours, maybe 4 hours, and then bring your temperature up. Pull it off and let it sit. The big thing though with beef ribs is actually finding some good beef ribs. A lot of times you can't find beef ribs that have got any kind of amount of meat on them.
Well, and that's true. Now, if you'll look at, there's two types of ribs. You've got your baby back, and that only means that's the rib that's closer to the backbone. And then you've got your spare rib or your lower rib, but it's the same rib. They cut them in half. For beef, you have a tendency to find better ribs on the spare rib side with more meat, because that's closer down on the front of the rib cage. It's closer to where the brisket's attached. So you've got a lot of good brisket ends on them. But I think ribs are hard to find with a lot of meat on them in general. But if it were me, I would look for spare rib. And then when you're looking at the spare rib, you're looking for the set of ribs that were actually closer to the front of the beef instead of towards the rear, because it's going to have a lot more of brisket hangings between the rib meats, and those are delicious. But hang on, Ron said something, and that's with all meats. You don't want to put cold meat onto a smoker. In fact, there's a little trick. You can get a good red smoke ring by putting a cooler piece of meat that's like maybe refrigerated, putting it on the smoker, but you're not going to increase flavor. The smoke ring is good. It tells you how it tells us as smokers, we'd like to see that. I don't know that there's any flavor difference in the smoke ring, in that red ring, to be quite honest with you. And there's a lot of thought process out there. You do a Google search on whether smoke ring actually increases flavor or not, and you'll get a mixed bag. But I think the bag is starting to turn these days towards there's no extra flavor because of the smoke ring, and that it can be manipulated with a cold piece of meat. But all meat should be put on at room temperature. Big Ron is 100% correct. It absorbs the smoke better there. It's relaxed. It's not. It's rested. In fact, that's what in the smoking world, that's what it's called. It's a pre-rest, pre-smoke rest. You set it out to rest, and then you're going to rest it after you smoke it for the juices to absorb back in. But 100%, it needs to be room temperature for that.
Joe, I got a question about the smoke ring. Is about 1/8 of an inch? Is that about all you're going to get on really any kind of meat cut?
I've heard a quarter. An eighth to a quarter is all you're going to get, and that's just because the chemical processes that are happening inside the meat that are drawing up and pretty much being evaporated out.
Okay.
But I think bark is the true tell. If I see bark on a piece of meat, and I'll tell you, there's a place here in Dallas. I think it's called Slow Bone. I think is exactly the name of it. But they don't try to get a smoke ring, but they rest their meat to a very I think their temperature they put their meat on is at rested, I think, is a secret. But they rest their meat, and you may get a piece of meat with no smoke ring in it whatsoever, but it is penetrated with smoke flavor. It's got a bark on it that's unbelievable. You won't leave that place unhappy, and you won't leave anything on your plate for 100% sure. So I don't know that the smoke ring has a whole lot to do with flavor. We do like to see it. I like to see it. I'm like everybody else. I like to see it when I smoke a piece of meat. I want to see the smoke ring on there. It tells me it feels like I've done something. But I think at the end of the day, the older I've gotten, I think that maybe it doesn't have as much to do with it as I think it does.
Like a sense of accomplishment.
I will tell you that beef ribs is one thing that I have really struggled with. I can't. I've done it.
Tell us how you do them. What's your recipe?
Kind of. I think the first time I did it, I treated it like pork, and it just turned out like shit. And the second time I did it, I tried it at a lower temp. They look good. I just can't get it done. If I'm looking for suggestions on it, if you guys want to send me something, because they do look really good. I have not figured it out.
Okay, this is they look good, but they don't taste good.
No, they taste like shit.
Are you not getting smoke in them? If you had to critique the taste, how would you critique?
Let me ask you this: what temp do you cook them to? Because I look at beef like, I'm a medium rare guy. What temp do you cook beef ribs to?
I'm going to take them off at internal temperature 160, 165.
All right, that's a little higher than I went, but maybe
that's more of a medium level there, Jason. For the internal temp, you don't want rareness. You want the meat to be kind of cooked all the way through, but you still want it to be juicy. So with Joe having a 165, 60 to 65 is going to be about a medium. You're not going to have really too much pink, but you're still going to have a lot of juice in there. And you're going to retain a lot of the flavor.
Well, and that's something I learned is I'm the same way as you, Jason. Like for me, I pull my steak off at like 130, 135, and then I'll let it rest. That's usually about the perfect medium rare. And Joe's educated me that a brisket is not a steak. And,
okay, let's talk about that. If I go get a steak and I want it medium rare, I want it medium rare because there's some flavor in there that I lose if I go beyond medium rare. If I go beyond rare, this is the most flavorful steak that you're going to get. But we're not smoking meat like a steak. If I don't let that internal temperature rise up to at least 160, 165, and y'all have heard me say on my briskets, I actually like it a little higher. I want it between 175, 185. I don't want it over 190. 190 is too high, but I'll go as high as 190 before I pull it off.
That's what I do too.
What's happening in there is now all these juices that I've had in the layers that I've had in contact with smoke, which is not the middle of it. It's not near the bone on the rib. Think about that. It's not down deep. I've only had smoke on the outside, just smoke just wafting over the top of it. Now I've got some evaporation, so that means I'm drawing some moisture out of the meat and evaporating it off, and there's some solids that get deposited on top of the meat. That's good flavor. We like that. Now I'm spritzing it, so I'm adding some more flavor to it. Now when I go back and I wrap it, now I'm not letting any more. Now I don't want any more moisture to leave my meat. I want my meat to stay wet at this point. But I want now my temperature to rise up because I want now there to be a siphon action between the grains of the meat and the flavor that's on the outside to now to be drawn into the inside. This cyclic action is going to happen. I've heard me, and I think one of the first shows I told you I used an example of a tree because it's exactly what's happening. It's a siphon action, exactly how a tree can pull hundreds or thousands of gallons of water out of your soil every day from its roots by true evaporation. Because in the wood, you have these things called straws that go all the way from the roots to the very tips of the trees and into the leaves even. So the sunlight hits the leaves, hits the water that's in the leaves, evaporates the water out of the leaves. That evaporates, creates a siphon action, starts to pull from the ground. And this action can pull thousands of gallons of water, of moisture out of the ground and into that tree every day. We want to do the same thing when we're talking about meat. Once I wrap it up, I want because the grain becomes the straws. You have the pores and the meat and the flesh that moisture is able to move in and out of. It's natural. I want that action to happen because I want to take all that smoke I deposited on the front end of that. I want to get that down deep. And when you have a bone, it's even better because now I want to try to draw it into the marrow. I want to get the heat enough that you have the marrow action happening where some of the juice and the flavor out of the marrow of the bone actually gets into the meat. So think of Jason, if you're pulling them off cold, you're cutting yourself short. And honestly, it probably tastes like an unflavored piece of beef. To be quite honest with you, is what I would imagine that would taste like. Am I right?
Yep, it does. Yeah, it does. When you get a chance, Joe, send me a recipe or instructions on that.
To kind of jump on what John was asking about, and Jason, this is gonna go for your caveat for you too. Is the closer that meat is to room temperature, the better it's gonna take on. So if you're putting that meat on there any cooler than room temperature, and that's gonna vary from where you're at. I mean, I'm not talking about throwing the meat on there at like 80 degrees, 90 degrees, but you want it into the 60s, maybe even above 60 into the 70s. The only thing is, though, is you can't leave it too long because then you got to worry about spoiling. But you don't want it to be too cold, and that could be another thing, Jason. I'm not sure how long you're letting your meat set before you put it to the grill. I know when I put mine out to rest or pre-rest, I'll season it and let it rest seasoned. And then it will go to the grill once it's gotten to the point where I to the touch, I feel that it's at room temperature.
Yeah, I do that with all my meat. I let it rest probably a good 2 hours with season on it before I actually grill it. But I think I'm just pulling it off too early. I'm looking at the visual, I guess, that this looks done.
And that'll get you. And me and Bruce Wayne, when we first started talking, before we even started doing the show, he was like, "Oh, that's he's going to try to get me for being a Nazi on meat or essentially a PETA member for making my meat too warm internal temperature. But if I don't do that, then I'm not smoking. I'm just cooking. I might as well take a frying pan and put it in the oven and roast it and get it to internal temperature and pull it out because that's all I'm going to get. It's just not quite the same." Hang on, Jason. I think I might have found something for all of us that might describe what I'm talking about on the beef ribs that I might be able to even talk us through on this. Give me a second. Matter of fact, I did. Now, this guy, I've seen him before. He's ribs of TikTok, but he damn sure knows what he's doing. I'm not even sure where these guys are out of. Boy, that was loud. Hang on a second. But he's got a good piece of rib that when you go to the store, this is what you want to look for, and he prepares it just like I spoke of. And then I see. I tell you, before we go, John, tell us what we're looking at. This picture here. This is a picture that you put up. This is your brisket from last Sunday.
Yeah. So I was like super busy, so my girlfriend took pictures of it. So this is what I was talking about on the smoke ring. So that's on the fat side. So should I have had that much fat when it was said and done? I know we was talking about the rendering the fat down, but
Okay. What am I looking at though? So I'm looking at bark.
so
and I
that's
see
the
a
slices
red,
of the brisket. Yes, to answer your question.
and then I see a bit of a red ring. I mean, it looks like fat in there as well, right? Yes. Yeah. You should have had more heat. That goes back to the wrap. The wrap is going to finish out your rendering. and getting your internal temperature up. What temperature were you internally when you pulled it off?
So when I pulled it off the tub part, it was about 150, 153, something like that. So my firebox has a grate. Um, so I slid it. Oh, I wrapped it tight, and had it in the pan that it's in. It's in one of those big aluminum pans, and I slid it on top of the grate, and then I pushed one of my thermometers in, and within probably 15, 20 minutes, it got up to about 189, 190. And I know it keeps cooking, even after you pull it off. So I
Okay,
went
let me
ahead and
back
pulled
you up. So you wrapped it and put it into an aluminum foil pan, and then put that whole aluminum foil pan and the wrap back into the smoker.
in on top of the burn,
Okay.
in the burn box.
Don't use the aluminum pan. Take it out. If you're gonna wrap it in foil, that's fine, but put it directly back onto. You want to smoke any meat in aluminum pan, or any other type of pan. You want it to
Well,
be if you're gonna smoke it, put it on the grill raw and let it set. If you're going to when you wrap it, once you wrap it, put your package in there and let it set raw. What happens is heat builds up very quickly inside that container, and it gets you to it gets your internal temperature risen faster than the fat can render on the outside. Does that make sense?
yeah. Now I didn't have it in the pan while I was smoking it. I only had it in the pan after I had wrapped it to
Mhm.
get the temperature up. The smoking part was done. I was about 7 hours 45 minutes.
And then but you got the temperature in about 20 minutes once you wrapped it and put it in the pan.
After I wrapped it and put it in the pan, yes.
It's not enough time on heat. That's the reason you didn't render down.
Okay.
But I think if you take it out of the pan and leave the aluminum foil in there, you're going to have enough heat that's going to dissipate from around that instead of it being absorbed into. It's in a container essentially, my friend. So it's taking heat. It's being heated from all sides instead of just one area. And when that aluminum pan, so once the aluminum pan gets warm and gets hot, that heat transfers back directly into the meat aluminum foil. So
Okay.
it's being baked from all sides. It's going to get to internal temperature very quickly, but not enough time for you to render down all your fat. Still looks like a good cook though. I'm not kicking it, but I would if it were me. I would not. I just don't use aluminum pans or pans inside the
Well, if you can look
smoker at all.
over see on the right, I had all that juice, and I mean, I was afraid I was going to lose that juice down in.
I think you wrap too soon. To be honest with you, I usually go to 175 when I wrap.
Well, and John, I think a lot of that juice, because the meat expels that juice once you pull it off the heat, and if you let it rest, it'll tend to soak that juice back up. And I think you may have cut it a little. But what do you think, Joe?
I think all those are true. You can leave it on there until your internal temperature when you're ready to cook. Before you wrap it, let it get to a little hotter than that. Mine is 160, 165. Once we're there, but you know what? I would have wrapped it at 150 as well, but I wouldn't have put it into the pan. I think your pan is your biggest issue on this. And
Okay.
if you look to the left side, you see looks like little strings or drapes in there below the red string. I can't
Yeah.
show you on the marker because it's not on my screen, but that is the fat rind that runs through the center. You want to get hot enough on the inside that renders down, that doesn't leave actual gelatinous fat on this gap that's there. When you say you and I talked about it, a good brisket, when you buy one, you'll be able to bend it over and fold it flat. That's what you're checking to see how stiff and heavy that interior fat rind is that's on the interior of that piece of meat. If it's real thick, it won't bend over and hold very well. If it's just right, it'll bend over and fold flat. That means it's good. It won't take a whole lot of heat to render it down. You won't have that issue because the problem is you never know that until you cut it, and you're done. So if it's not right, it's like everybody's there that's been watching you smoke for 8 hours and talking shit are going to be like, oh yeah, look at that fat.
Well, I'm not going to lie. I mean, I did feel kind of pressed on time. So now I did trim some of the fat off of it while I was letting it, get what you would call room temperature. Because I had put it in a cooler with a bag of ice overnight, so I could load and go. But I did cut some fat off, but I also, now looking back at it, I may not have cut enough off.
You know what? I don't think you hit the render temperature. To be quite honest with you. So
Now, do you want to put it in there with ice over, like at right away, or is that that's just to store it after it's
No,
cooled?
what I had done, see, originally, because I didn't know when I was going to fix it, so I froze it. So then the day before, I laid it out and it thawed out. Well, that night before I was going to put it on the cooker, I brought the cooler in, laid it in the cooler, thawed out, but I just laid a bag of ice on it. So, I mean, obviously it wouldn't go bad overnight. And then I just picked the cooler up and left at 4 a.m. that morning to go down to the pool where my cooker was. So I left it on ice until about an hour before I was going to.
No, give you guys a good idea. If you pull it from the fridge, you're going to want a 2-hour, 3-hour rest, or you're not even going to get close. If it were me, John, I would have pulled it from the refrigerator that night, put it in a cooler with no ice, and let that go all night like that. You would have been fine. Remember, it's a big piece of meat. It doesn't transfer temperature very quickly. Whether it be does it get cold fast? It doesn't get hot fast. It's 15 pounds of dense meat, so it will hold itself a bit. You don't have to worry about it. And my end rest, guys, I like a 3-hour rest. I want to wrap it in a towel, put it in a cooler that's been heated with hot water and the hot water dumped out, and I want it to sit in there for another 3 hours. To me, that's the perfect rest on a brisket. Let's take a look at a beef rib. All right, this is a guy. I'm not sure where he's out of, but this is how I would do mine here in Texas. And absolutely, I would look for these ribs that he's got there. You may have to go to your butcher to get them. You may not find them at your local grocery store unless you know your butcher very well. But this is how I do beef ribs. So there he goes. He's trimming the fat, salt and pepper, both sides. Pours that juice on top of it. He folds better than I do.
Was that tallow?
That was the fat that he pulled off and rendered down.
Okay.
All right, hang on. Let's go look back at that.
Yeah, and I did not do that either, but I had read about that.
Two
I can't
things that
find
he's
beef
done.
ribs that look that good.
That's interesting. Spraying parchment paper on the outside. I wouldn't have thought of that. Is that just to keep it folded?
It helps seal it. You do want to, you don't want to spray it all the time, but you want to give it one spritz. But you notice that he's got his thermometer in there, and that thermometer is in on the thick side of the rib. I mean, he's in between the ribs and the meat, down in the thickest portion of his little slab of ribs. So he's going to move forward here. He's going to give it a good press, and now he's spritzing it. He's just sealing it so that you don't have a hard evaporation coming out of that paper. That's one of the reasons I like parchment paper, that you can spritz it, you can kind of seal it, and some of the oils inside help seal it as well, so you don't have the escaping of vapor through it like you kind of do with aluminum foil, to be quite honest with you. But he's going to put that on there. He's going to finish his temperature. He's done. He's unwrapping. It's nice and greasy and juicy and good. Look at that. Cut them through. Cut them through. Oh. Now he finished up with the rest of his tallow pulling on it. But do you see how
down, Joe? You just had a heart attack.
Oh, I'm telling you, man. Okay. And I'm not a rib guy, but that if I do a rib, that's what I'll go through it again. It's short. See how he trims it off. See how there's not much meat, not much fat left on that. But he doesn't get rid of that fat.
Seriously, you guys are making me hungry.
Oh, damn! Tell you, doesn't it? See how he renders it down in the side right there. Now, folks, you can do that with a brisket as well. You can do the same technique you saw here. When you go wrap, you can pour that tallow back into your brisket and do your wrap and put back in, just like you did with this rib. I don't do it a lot because it's a lot more grease than I feel like I want to pull on it. But it don't make it bad, and it don't make it worse. I promise you.
Now I'm going to toss something in there real quick. If you look when you put that back into the grill, you'll notice that there's a rod sticking out of one side. I have one of those thermometers, and I'll tell you for some of these cooks that we do, having that thermometer makes things so much easier, and it really helps you get those temperatures spot on if you don't know how to press on the meat and tell what the temperature rating is just by feel.
Well, let's talk about that. There's a time when it's right for it to come off, and there's time it's too soon, and there's time it's too late. And those times can be very close together when you have smaller pieces of meat. Now, brisket, you got a little plus or minus. Now, with these ribs, with a bone-in rib, when that rib bone starts to heat up, that meat cooks rather quickly. It transfers the heat internally very quickly. So it gets to a point where you're either not hot enough, or all of a sudden you're too hot. So what Big Ron is saying, the internal temperature ones, and yours is a Bluetooth, isn't it, Big Ron?
Yes, it is. Mine's Bluetooth that goes to my phone and my tablet. So depending on what I'm cooking, I keep an extremely tight eye on what I'm cooking and watch those temperatures very closely. And I think that's
Temperature
what
is
he's
everything.
using. I think that's what he's using on this one too. When he puts it back in, that looks like the same meter probe that I'm using. When it goes back into the grill, he's got to push through the parchment paper.
That looks amazing. I can't help but ask. Did he got a teardrop on his eye?
It's
Got-
because he ate too many ribs, dude. You got it's permanent
Don't
tear
judge,
tear of
Jason.
joy.
Got in a fight over them.
Yeah, it means,
Okay, so I got to ask, because Grizzly Greg asked in the comments, and I want to know too, where do you buy ribs that size?
Go to your butcher.
Yeah.
Those are beef ribs, and I want to say those aren't what's called baby backs. Those are the lower rib or spare rib, and they're going to be. See how beefy they are. Wait till we get. It's kind of running a loop. When we get back to where when he cuts them, you're literally looking at pieces of the brisket. That's where the bone ends on the lower end of the rib. That's pieces of the brisket that they trim off. So it's literally brisket meat. See, it looks like brisket meat. God, man.
Yeah, a lot
Now-
of times, Grizz, you're gonna have a hard time finding ribs like that. I know I do here in where I'm at. They get stingy. They want to cut as much of that meat off the bone as they can and get it down to that brisket or the flat section or the point. To the point, even when we asked the commissary if we could buy a six bone untrimmed, they actually would not sell it to us. They told us they couldn't sell us that section of the meat. So, but a local butcher or farm is probably going to be your best bet.
Yeah, and I don't know. Here in Texas, there's a butcher in every town. They're expensive. You can pay a
Yeah.
little bit for that. But if you're going to do beef ribs, that's the way to do it. And even if you don't have that much meat, folks, you can still do the same thing. You just got to do more of them. People are still going to love them. I like beef ribs better than I like pork. Pork, I wouldn't do it too uncommonly differently. I might add a little more flavor to it because you just don't get to me, pork doesn't have the flavor that beef does. So it does kind of require a little bit more saucing. But here's what I want to say. You notice he trims it. Oh, by the way, I missed that, and I didn't say it when I said it, but he has a very good point there. I think he's using olive oil. Using an oil on the meat prior to the seasoning is absolutely a great idea for both your briskets and your and your ribs. It helps to give it some base to stick to. So that's a good idea. I like olive oil. I don't like using canola oils or sunflower seed oils. I just don't think they add much to it, whereas olive oil seems to. Avocado oil I've used. I think it is a decent oil as well. But you do want to put a bit of drips of oil on your meat before you put your dry seasoning on it. And that rub, it's why they call it a rub. Get some rubber gloves and rub that shit in. You want to rub it in and get it good.
So now
And I
I've
can't-
used
can't
lemon
look at this.
juice
Can't look at
because
this anymore.
for two reasons. One, to have the rub bond to a bonder, and two, I've heard and read that lemon juice will also help tenderize. And you don't really, and I've used it on ribeyes before. You don't taste it at all. So,
I wouldn't use anything acidic personally. In fact, that may even actually prohibit your bark. I don't know that it doesn't, but I don't.
yeah. No, I didn't
Folks,
use.
what's going to tenderize this meat? What makes these ribs tender? What makes that brisket tender is all the fat that you leave on it that renders. As that renders down, it kind of breaks connective tissue down. It goes into the meat. And the meat absorbs it because it is of the meat. It is of itself. So that's what makes it tender. Low and slow makes it tender. Nothing else you're going to do. If you really want to make a tender piece of meat, put it in a plain yogurt overnight. It has enzymes in it. Actually begins to break it down. You leave it in there for 2 days. You have to spoon it out to get it onto the grill. But it doesn't leave. It leaves the meat very white. It doesn't leave very good flavor, but it will absolutely make it tender. But if you want tender meat and we're smoking, and that's what we're talking about, that's one of the purposes of smoking meat is to get it low and slow and extremely tender. And the chemical process that are happening in there is that rendering of fat. And I told you that you don't want to trim. See how thin that was on fat for a rib? Don't do that on a brisket. Leave most of your fat on a brisket so it renders into the brisket. It's a bigger piece of meat. This rib has fat inside of it that you can't see. So trimming it on the outside is okay on beef ribs, and then it also gives you something to render. But also on a brisket, that rendering that the fat that you trim off, tallow it, render it down on the smoker with it because it's picking up while you're rendering. It's also picking up smoke. It's picking up flavor. So when you pour that back on, and then remember, the meat will absorb it because it is of itself, and you cook it and get it up to temperature. You're putting that flavor, that smoke flavor, right back into that meat, super deep. I can watch this on the side. You guys aren't watching. I'm sorry, but I got to end this. I can't watch that no more because that is too delicious looking. So, any questions on beef ribs? That's my recipe for beef ribs, Jason. I can absolutely get you hooked up. I think Shane may even have some special beef ribs in the freezer that he was talking about. There's a reason I brought up beef ribs as a subject tonight that I can help you guys with for Saturday. That should be super delicious.
Fidgy says she's got some things on oil.
What's she got on oil?
What you got on oil, Fidge?
Well, yeah, I'd like to hear what she's got on oils. Their oils can be finicky, and we got Big Grizz. Sorry, guys, I've been looking at the ribs there. I've negated our comment section. Grizz said he knows somebody named Joe Lanou in Texas would send him some ribs. I bet that guy won't. I bet he won't send you a box of ribs. He might because he's a pretty good dude. Okay, he says olive oil has a smoke point of 320 to 420. Yes, you're correct. And avocado oil has a high smoke point. Guys, you don't want to get to the smoke point. You don't want to be cooking. You don't want to smoke and gas off.
No.
It leaves a bad flavor.
Yeah, especially olive oil. Burning olive oil. Low temp for olive oil. I try to use avocado for anything I'm going to do that's going to be really hot.
Yeah, but for smoking, I'm okay with olive oil because I'm not getting near that temperature. We're just not going to get that hot.
Exactly.
But I agree. Avocado oil is a better oil. It's good for you too. It has a very high smoke point, and you can just
520.
You're serious frying with that. Zoe olive oil is a true olive oil. Okay, what she's also saying is that it may say olive oil on the bottle, but it may not be all olive oil. I've heard that as well. Now, I'll also say these oils like avocado oil and olive oil, they don't last as long as you think. They go bad. They putrefy. So you don't want to keep them. You don't buy in large quantities, and you don't want to keep it very long. I would say once you open up your olive oil, you're probably good for 2 months. After that, you want to trash it. Same thing with avocado. You don't want to keep them around too long. They don't have a shelf life.
You're 100% right. I'll tell you something else you can do with those olive oils. Is if you guys want to play around with them, and this helps me. I do this when I'm doing steaks. You can infuse your olive oils. Put a little bit of thyme in there, some garlic and some other things. Keep it in a separate bottle, small batch. Let it sit, and you'll infuse those flavors into that olive oil. And when you go to season a steak or something like that, you could actually help infuse some of those flavors into the meat.
Man, that's a whole nother show. All right, guys, we got down to the last 20 minutes. And what's the Fidgy say? I wonder how the grapeseed oil would do. You know what? I think any oil is going to be fine. I think any oil you've got is going to be infused with smoke flavor. So I don't know that it really matters. I don't like canola or vegetable oil or your Crisco type stuff. If I'm going to put an oil on there, I think I'm going to something a little fancier. I'll put that on the meat. She's also a big fan of infusing, and so am I. But that brings me to low temperature smoking. We talked about smoking cheeses. Something that Professor Savage Dad brought up that I think is intriguing is smoking a cheesecake. I think that would be delicious. But Professor Dad, have you ever smoked a cheesecake? And if so, what kind of wood do you use? What flavor are you looking for?
So I did this once before, only once because it didn't turn out well. The wife didn't like it. I didn't mind it. I used applewood on it, and never has applewood been stronger than that cheesecake. I hit it with way too much smoke, and it was a Thanksgiving that we did it for, so she was kind of frustrated. I messed up the cheesecake we were supposed to have, but I still get reminded of that one when I'm like, "Hey, let's smoke that cheesecake again." She's like, "No." I'm like, "All right, well, it was too hot. It made it messy, and it
It was the pecan cheesecake, basically the mashed up pecan pie slash.
yes, pecan pie cheesecake, and it was over smoked. It was too smoky, and it was too liquidy because it was too hot. Like
Okay,
it made it
so
very
heat
messy.
was a factor, and then you got it took smoke too quickly, you'd say?
Yeah, way too quickly.
Okay.
Way
I
too
like
much.
to smoke cheeses. I've never smoked a cheesecake, but I've just wrote that down because it is on my list. It's something I absolutely will try.
You
But
can
I
do it.
do
I've seen
I
it.
do it with cardboard box. I'll take a hair dryer or get my fire going, whatever smoke that I want, and I'll get a container. The food safe bags, the larger you can get for like what do you call it when you're going to do cake dressing? Put some smoke in there, kick it into the box, and put your product in the box and let it sit. No heat. Just let that smoke set in there because it's going to lie into it very quickly. And we see that now with this modern thing that the Big Ron does actually with a couple of chips of wood and smoking bourbon or smoking old fashions. You just put
Yeah.
some smoke in the surface and cover it for a second or two, and it infuses into the moisture very quickly because it absolutely will. It'll infuse into the cheesecake and it infuses into cheeses. I do my own smoked Gouda, and I like the smoked Gouda with either an apple wood or a cherry wood. But I do that literally with a cardboard box on a table in the garage. I bag my smoke, and then I push the smoke in there for maybe 30 minutes, not very long. But that cheese is so porous, it absorbs smoke so quickly that you don't need anything. You don't need heat, and you probably shouldn't have it on the grill at all because I think you're going to get too much smoke. It'll inundate it with
Yeah.
smoke. That's my suggestion for your cheesecake. I'm dying for you to try, but if not, I'll try it before Thanksgiving for sure.
Yeah, I might have to give that a try somewhere or try it like that where I'm not going to hit with. I mean, I just can't do it this time of year. There's no way. But even at night, it would be too hot. It's about 90 degrees out every night.
I tell you what, give me a couple of weeks and we'll do a video on it and we'll do it here and do a taste test.
Ooh, that
Um,
sounds
folks,
awesome.
that's where we're going to get on this. And like I said, we started this out. That was the whole intention, was to actually pick a something and get you some videos on it. We did some with chicken. I've got to put those together. I got had a little medical emergency kind of come up in the middle of this where I haven't been able to do some of my back end editing work. I'm back in it again. We're going to get it. Scorchy, you can try to get away if you want. You can change your name if you want, but I think I've got you locked in. I'm going to hunt you down because you've got some ideas that I want to try to bring in and incorporate and do some test smoking, we'll test some of these things out to just see how it works. But we want to smoke. My thing is you can smoke anything. I can smoke bird. I can smoke fish. I can smoke cheese. Didn't know I could smoke a cheesecake, but by God, I can smoke a cheesecake. I can smoke a old fashioned. I can smoke beef. I can smoke anything. I can smoke anything. If you understand how smoke works and what you're actually trying to do, we can do it. We're even going to get into cold smoking where you make your own bacon or your own European style bacon or your own pepperoni or your own sausage meats and stuff. As we get into deer hunting season, when folks are getting the sausage in that, they're putting sage in it, they're making the best they can. But now can we do a hickory smoke? Bacon, pork belly in a cold smoke environment. I can show you how to hook that up honestly anywhere you're at in your backyard. Yeah, you don't need much. And we're going to experiment with some different types of woods as well. That's my thing on my suggestion on a cheesecake or any cold smoking is that you don't try to do it inside of a smoke container. Because and let's go back to what Big Ron said when we first started talking about the pellet smoker. He's putting bacon grease in there to give his a season and a flavor. His smoking chamber is gonna have a flavor. If you were to take a cheesecake and put it into his and shut the lid and don't start a fire on it, just leave the cheesecake in there exposed. Even a good piece of Gouda cheese, leave it in there unexposed for an hour or two and come back. It's going to taste like inside that box. It's going to taste like bacon. Probably wouldn't be a great taste. But when we smoke cheeses, we want a fresh smoke taste to that. By bagging or transporting cold smoke into the chamber, that's how you can achieve that, and that's the best way, in my opinion, to smoke cheeses. And by God, a cheesecake. What do you think about smoking pecans before you put them on the pie?
Ooh. Hell
Now we
yeah.
know we can smoke nuts,
Mm-hmm.
right?
That sounds real good.
Well, Bruce Wayne's an expert on smoking nuts. You want to talk to us about smoking nuts, Bruce Wayne?
I knew you were going there.
I hate you.
The big thing in Idaho, nut smoking. But almonds are a good thing to smoke.
I don't think we grow any nuts up here. I think you're confusing Californians with Idaho.
Well, that's probably true as well. But we've got, but we're going to get into all that different type of smoke things. Give us time to kind of spin up, because everybody's going to take a little piece of this. We got our pellet smoker and expert, which is in my opinion is Big Ron. Seen a lot of guys with pellet smokers. I hadn't seen anybody be able to produce product like he has. He gets damn close to a wood smoker, but still not there. Fidgy's saying, what about alcohol? Absolutely, you can smoke alcohol. You can smoke liquids and oils. Folks, you can do this olive oil we're talking about. You can smoke that as well. It's not actually as complicated as you think. You need a half liquid and half bottle. You do the same thing. You put the smoke in there, put the lid on it, give it a turn a few times, and then pour it out. It's going to absorb that smoke flavor into that oil. Oils absorb flavors real well.
Well, and if I'm not mistaken, Ron just smoked himself some bourbon right before the show, and he actually has a really nifty contraption. I don't know if you have the picture of that.
Big Ron, where's that at? Didn't you have a video of that?
I sent it in the it's in the night crew chat.
Give me a second. I did see that. That actually, you know what? That might be. Oh, it's just.
I got one of those.
Yeah,
for
it's just a
Father's Day,
picture.
too. The whiskey smokers.
It looks real fancy. One of those.
Yeah,
vapor-
it's really nice.
Yeah, because I've seen like at bars they'll have like a dish and they'll just light the wood chips on fire and put the glass upside down. But what you
Yeah,
got?
I've seen those, and you get a little bit of flavor in the glass, but nothing like that right there. That really works
wild.
into the meat.
Okay, let's look at that for a second. So you put your chips in the top, and it's got then you burn them, and it sucks it down. You hit the button, and it vacuums it down into the glass.
Yeah, yep, it sure does. And as
All
long
right,
as you don't go too heavy on
Savage.
the fire, there you won't get that burned flavor. So
Okay.
you got to find that medium between just enough to get the smoke, but not too much where you're getting that charred flavor of the wood.
What about this, Professor Savage? If you had one of those devices, could you not rig that up even with some duct tape on the top of a cardboard box? Put your chips in there, spark them, hit the button, fill your.
Oh yeah,
your
you could.
chamber.
You could do a cheese in that. Just get some foil around it, keep it in there. You could do that.
Yeah.
Little chunk of cheese. Yeah.
Now, Ron, do you hit that button and there's a preset timer, or
Nope. It'll just keep on going until you tell it to stop, my friend.
Okay. Nice.
Well, if you want to set up shots for someone to test, I'll test them for you.
I bet we could do that as well. Yeah, you know what? That's an idea. Well, I'll get with you, Ron. We might be able to use your contraption and everything you've got. We could actually just smoke some cheeses and things by ringing up just see if you had a slightly larger smoke chamber, then you could lighten up how thick your smoke is inside, and how thick your flavor is going to be. But you could sure do some cheeses in there, I think, real quick, and probably a cheesecake. Professor Savage, I think you could salvage a cheesecake on that with that contraption he's got there.
Yeah. With the box, like put that on top of a cardboard box, just have the hole in it, seal it with some duct tape, foil wrap the whole thing. Oh yeah.
Yep. And then you could control the smoke in there. If you get too much, you just open it up and let it whiff out for a minute, put it back down. But you could control the smoke infusion into your product. I like it.
You could do eggs in that thing too.
Yeah. Fidgy says, "Shut up and take my money."
Oh, yeah.
She's down with it.
I'll shoot you the DM for it there, Veggie.
Now, say you could do eggs. Tell me about eggs.
Oh, if you've never had smoked eggs, you got to try them. They're not store-bought eggs, actual farm-raised, backyard, whatever eggs. I've done smoked eggs a few times, and you're missing out.
I'm gonna do it the way you said, because we wanted to do egg salad with it, or just eat them raw. Eat both ways. We tried it one way she found, didn't work out. So I'm gonna try what you said next time. I think that's definitely a different way, and I think that's gonna do better.
Did I miss all the eggs? How are we doing this?
The shell won't. So that if you throw eggs onto your smoker, if you don't, there's a film over the egg that protects the egg. So if you throw it on just that way, you got to wash them down and get that film off of it for the shell to actually allow penetration of the smoke into the egg. So what I found out is if you smoke them high for just a little, like a half hour, and you hard boil them in your grill, peel them off, cool them off, then peel the shell so they're already hard boiled, and then go back to the grill at a very, very low temp and put them back on. Now those eggs will be penetrated with smoke, and depending on what, how much smoke you want, depends how much time you put them in there. But I go with it. I like the smoke taste, so I go with a hickory or a mesquite pellet, and I put them back on for about 30 to 45 minutes, and they're phenomenal.
Perfect. That's something I can do to fill the racks. I always feel like I'm wasting pellets if I don't have more meat in there, more things being smoked at once, So eggs are a good way for me to fill a few racks.
I love the way you think, Professor.
They're good. You need to try it.
You can fill a few racks with quail. You can hang those in your smoker. That's where I got it in my head, which would be like a snack while you're waiting for your brisket to get done. Quail are delicious smoked, folks, if you've never had them.
I'm actually getting ready to do some Cornish game hens on there soon.
Ooh, that sounds good. Quail I could probably get with a BB gun around here if I could find them. They hide when it's this hot out, but they're around.
Yeah, everything hides when it's that hot out. I lived in Phoenix back in COVID time. Was it 2020? Yeah, I left in 2020, but it's great weather. It's great weather there until June. But from June to September, it is just no being should be living there.
No.
All right, guys, we're at the last 9 minutes. We're going to wrap this up. I appreciate our guests tonight, Professor Savage and Scorchey. You guys are freaking awesome. I'm glad I was able to meet you.
Thanks for having me.
Put this together. We will be better on this on next week's episode, and you guys are invited back. I'm going to be talking to both of you kind of on the side on some DMs for two different reasons, but we invite you back as regular contributors to the show. We will start doing putting kind of out some assignments, like we're going to do pork. I think pork, but where did John go? Did John leave already? Well, he did, didn't he?
Yeah, I think John dropped.
I think John can do a pork butt, and we'll go over that next week as well.
Do you know what rub he used, Joe? He called me and asked me.
What he rubs his butt with? I have no idea.
Jesus Christ, dude. No.
Why are you laughing?
Because you're an idiot.
Because we're all 5-year-old kids.
Oh, I'm still talking about smoke. What are y'all talking about? No, I don't know what type of rub that he's using. I'm kind of encouraging him to. He's North Carolina, folks. North Carolina is a pork barbecue place. Kansas City is a beef barbecue place, but they do theirs slightly a little bit different. Texas has a different style of smoking meats. So,
don't forget, North Carolina is also very vinegar based on a lot of their stuff.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. It's almost like they're not trying to get smoke in the meat. They want to, like I said earlier, they want to cook it, slow roast it so it's tender, so they can pull it apart, and then they put the sauce into it to flavor it. But I'm kind of encouraging him to use some of his. Oh, I see a comment here from Fidgy that I'm not putting up. I control the comments, Fidgy. I'm not putting that up. That was horrible.
So, are you saying that John rubs vinegar on his butt? Is that what you're saying?
I can't confirm or deny it. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know what's done in North Carolina when it comes to pig butts. But he's got one, I know, and I know that's going to be smoked. He did a brisket last week. We got some little video on that. So next week we'll have some of the tests that we've actually done and we have videos on. We've got some great chickens. We've done beer can chicken smoked, and we did spatchcock beer can chicken smoked with our friend Veteran out of Kentucky. And those turned out beautiful. And he's got some good video on that. We'll get it back into that and go over that next week. So my point is, for those of you who listen, we don't have a lot of listeners tonight, viewers tonight, but it's going to get better. Spread the word to other folks out there that I think this is interesting. I think it's good conversation. And I think that we can actually put together some stuff and learn some things and have fun and get some good eats.
And it's nothing compared to the 1,500 people we get sometimes in our regular spaces. But last I checked, what are we at now? Last I checked, we're at 74.
We're at 84. We're only at
All right.
84 tonight. But guys, I had no promotion on this. Keep that in mind.
It's respect.
Hey,
just didn't
Joe. So Friday night, my Marine son is home. I'm going to bring him in as a speaker with me on police shootings to see from a active duty Marine how they would respond. I think that'd be
Outstanding. I was thinking, yeah. Well, I knew your boy was home. We kind of expected you not to be there, but if you can join us, we'll take that as a treat. Absolutely. For those of you that haven't, don't follow us, we also do a video show on Friday nights. It's a police video use of force review. We have a panel of law enforcement officers, attorneys, and civilians. We kind of take the point of a grand jury. We look at what we see on the video, and we make a determination whether with law enforcement, when they go to a grand jury, where they would be indicted to go to a trial to see if their actions were justified, or if their actions were so apparently justified that a grand jury would no bill them and they would go back. Excuse me, they would go back to duty. So that's our show. Pretty popular show. We get a lot of viewers on that, and it's a lot of fun. We do cut up. We don't take it real serious. We'll go back and forth. We'll have some good debates back and forth between attorneys, law enforcement, civilians, and how they see things. So join us for that one as well on Friday. Same time. Our time slots are the same, 9 to 11 Eastern, for all of our shows. And of course, our night court show tomorrow night will be on X Spaces. We don't do a video show for that, but that's also 9 to 11. Catch us on that. I think that we're going over. I think we're going to have to go back over. We're going to have to go back over the Biden and political items that are going on right now. I don't see any way around it, but that'll be our show tomorrow. We're going to cut that up and where can the Democrats go? What can the Democrats do? And what kind of forecast do we think of this exciting political summer that's about to be before us? That I think is going to be epic to live through. But Scorchey, I want you to promote your product one more time. Give us out how we can get a hold of you. And folks, he said it once, and he's probably going to say it again. These are custom batches. He only makes so many at a time. So if you're interested in one of those, you need to get him an email in there. Be first up, first come, first serve, so that you can be on a list of the next batches that he has coming up. But sounds like he's got some very interesting flavors and processes that he's putting that together. And you also should be looking forward to some Scorchey rubs that we'll be testing out here very soon. But Scorchey, tell us about Scorchey.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Again, startup company, just myself doing this. All ingredients are homegrown ingredients. I make every batch individually. So I am at the mercy of Mother Nature. So as Joe pointed out, email me. It's Scorchey, spelled backwards, at gmail.com. Send me what you want, and yeah, I'll get you hooked up. And Jason, tell your son I said thank you for serving. I appreciate it, especially in the climate the military's in these days.
Well, Scorchy, I'm trying to find you on X. I'm looking at a real small screen right here. What's your X? Where can I find you on X?
His X handle name is actually not Scorchy. I'll have to look at it, but I've got it. If he can't get it to you now, I can get you a DM on it. I'll do it right now.
Yeah, again, it's Scorchy's spelled backwards. I know it's kind of a pain in the butt, but it's a running joke that I have with some of my buddies. I'm sorry.
I feel like you expect too much from me. I'm not that smart. I'll figure it out. Appreciate it.
There it is. If you see it there,
I got.
He's right. Scorchy spelled backwards on X.
Thank you. Perfect.
Right, and Professor Savage, Dad, you have you're on a couple of different social platforms. You're a meme creator, am I right? Tell us about what you do. Smoking is what we're enjoying right here, but that's not what you're doing on X and your social platforms. So tell us about your presence there.
Yeah, for people who
So
don't
on X,
fellowship in the lead,
sorry.
the 101 on that.
No, yeah, so I'm a bit of a memer. I make memes. I meme, frankly, whatever. I don't care. Whatever the hell I think is funny. They could be political. They could be pop culture. It could be some people I know. I don't care. Whatever the hell is funny. I'm also on a couple shows. I do a show with my friend Devil Made Me Do It called Wrong Think. It's a little bit of a political meme show. So we talk politics. We go over some political meme review. It's pretty cool. I do the weekly Rogues Gallery. It's a bit of a pop culture panel show on Friday nights, usually after Friday Night Tights, since that's basically Friday afternoon tights for those of us on the West Coast in the Pacific time zone. You'll find us there actually doing something at night, 5:30 Central every Friday night. I have my own channel and show called Dadcast that I do, talking about family, fatherhood, stuff like that. Positive representation of men and fathers in media is something I find lacking, something I like to talk about a lot. I also have, as you'll see there, another channel with one of my other hobbies, which is 3D printing. I made a little toy for my kids, and I ran, it was an 18-hour print that I just live streamed because I like to do it and see what it does with the numbers for the rest of my channels. Like when I run long streams on Rumble, it gets traction other places that I don't expect it to, and I can turn it on and let it go. So it's kind of like a little fishbowl stream where you can sit there and watch the printer printing. I think they're cool. I like watching things like that occasionally when I'm killing time. I'll also do quick prints and kind of print like reviews. Like, hey, look at this thing I printed. Look at the detail I managed to get out of it. Stuff like that. And I'm looking, eventually I'll start doing probably a panel conversation about 3D printing occasionally as well. I'm still talking to some other people about getting that going. So I've got a bunch of, trying to keep it at least focused on 3 areas of things that I'm interested in, which is usually pop culture, 3D printing, and my dad's stuff. That's the stuff I produce because I feel like it's something I'm pretty knowledgeable on and I can make a show out of it or make content out of it. So that's what I do when I'm in the content creation mode, which I kind of currently out of, except for that thing I did the other day, simply because I'm still trying to play with what gets me traction in the algorithm, be it on YouTube or Rumble. Like what happens when I'm running something for that long. I like doing weird things like that with technology, just testing things, see what they do. See what happens.
We're doing the same thing too. We're trying to figure out our place in the weird algorithm, but we like to be informative. I like the stuff that you're doing. I'd like to talk to you about some of that stuff as well. Maybe we can do some collaboration on some spaces and passing some information back and forth. Folks, that's it for our show. Join us we'll do a night space after this. We call it the after party. I'll shoot an invite to all the guests that are on the show here, but we'll have an after party space. We can kind of continue the conversation and take it where we want to go. We don't have to maintain the same conversation topics, but everybody's welcome. All you folks listening, you're welcome as well. Give us about 10 minutes to get us something to drink, stretch our legs, and we'll see you there.
You're also known as Duck Corella.
I refuse to answer on the grounds of main intent to
You got any business?
I refuse to answer on the grounds of intent to criminate.
You have any profession?
I refuse to answer on the grounds of main
You
intent
have
to
any
criminate.
occupation?
I refuse to answer on the grounds of main intent
Are
to
you a
criminate.
known racketeer?
I refuse to answer on the grounds of main intent to criminate.
Name Winkleman of the Elizabeth
You ever
Police.
get any money from Costello?
No.
And did you ever get any money from Maya Lansky?
I never got money from any of those fellas.
None of those
None of
fellas?
those fellas.